paradise? For castrated sheep, maybe.
Douglas is, admittedly, not one of the more interesting characters, but he's very likable and has his part in this story. He was a detective hired by Claudia to find Heather. Once Heather's dad is killed indirectly by Claudia, Douglas feels partly responsible, so he decides to help out Heather and a cautious friendship develops. I hate to think of what sort of fan fiction has been written about this scene.
You lied to me about Heather, lady.
Toward the end, he confronts Claudia and ends up getting himself injured. In the end, all he really physically did once the game started was give Heather a way to get to Silent Hill. But once they meet up again, we learn something interesting and kind of ironic about Douglas.
Remind me of my son.
You said nobody was going to cry for you.
Dead people don't cry.
So we have a father without a child and a child without a father. No wonder they end up getting along so well.
Sorry. I shouldn't have said you reminded me of a guy like you.
Well, maybe if you had compared me to your daughter.
In typical Silent Hill fashion, the good ending is left wide open, but the sentimentalist in me likes to think that he adopted Heather if only for a year or so.
Don't die on me, okay?
Douglas was named after Douglas Fairbanks, an actor from the 20s, mainly just because the name suited him. And he was modeled after Ian Holm and Giancarlo Giannini. He's probably the one character in Silent Hill 3 who didn't undergo any serious redesigns. Douglas's tarot card is the Hanged Man, which means self-sacrifice, perseverance, and selflessness. Douglas's ironic fate is expressed by that card, as he sticks his nose into Heather's affairs, but in the end is not of any help at all.
Remember me, and your true self as well. Also, that which you must become. The one who will lead us to paradise with blood-stained hands.
Next to Heather, Claudia is really just about the most important character in the game, not to mention possibly the most compelling. Naturally, she comes off as this dark figure, a villain, and she does some terrible things.
There is another reason. To fill your heart with hatred.
But as the game progresses, aspects of her background are revealed that help us to understand her better. She had a very troubled childhood with an abusive father, Leonard.
I saw the way he hit you, kicked you, and made you cry.
Who is an elitist and fanatical about the cult's religion.
To the voice of God will be given the keys to paradise.
Of course.
Her only outlet was her best friend Alessa, who was in a similar situation. But then Alessa was taken away when Dahlia sacrificed her. Claudia turned to the cult's religion and started listening to Dahlia's and Leonard's rants, and she began to believe that the world really was a terrible place, and only the cult's god could end everyone's suffering. Read hers. She's projecting like nobody's business.
Yes, yes! And that's why we need God!
And yet the only way to do this was to prolong Alessa's suffering.
No, I don't expect to be saved. And that's fine. Alessa, my dearest. For the pain that I've caused you, I deserve no mercy. Even if it was to save mankind. It was too deep a sin. It was hubris for me to try to hasten the day of her arrival. Sacrifices were made. And those are my sins.
Even Heather was moved by that speech. So yes, Claudia's done some terrible things, but it was at the expense of her own soul so she could save the rest of humanity. Moral ambiguity for the win. She's named after Claudia Cardinale, an Italian actress from the 60s. Originally she was to be called Christy, but they decided that name was a little too cute. Yeah, she doesn't really look like a Christy. Personally, whenever I hear the name Claudia, I think of Kirsten Dunst's character in Interview with the Vampire, so the name just screams villainous to me. She's modeled after Julianne Moore. Going by the preliminary drawings, it looks like they had a tough time nailing down her look. What they ended up going with is very reminiscent of Dahlia Gillespie, which I'm sure is no coincidence. Claudia's tarot card is, naturally, the High Priestess. The card means mystery, faith, and dogmatism. Doesn't it seem that the self-righteous way that Claudia behaves as a consequence of being too genuine is in accordance with the meaning of the card?
Happy people can be so cruel. Is it so hard to believe that sympathy could be born out of pain and suffering? Why do you reject God's mercy? Why do you cling to this corrupt world? You know that only God can save us.
The name's Vincent. Don't forget it, okay?
And now we come to Vincent.
I'm on your side.
I admit I saved him for the last because he's my favorite. He's not as complex and compelling as Claudia, but, well...
It's a bit far. But closer than heaven.
He's just fun. He's an aristocrat who helps run the cult's church while spending the believers' donations on himself. There's no moral ambiguity here. He's just bad.
Go ahead and kill this crazy bitch! This demon who claims to speak for God.
He doesn't inflict any physical harm on anyone. I doubt he really could, but...
Please, calm down.
He's distrusting, hateful, and smug.
If you to die, that would be nice.
And goddamn it, I love him. He likes to show up unexpectedly and give vague instructions.
She was totally brainwashed by that crazy old hag.
Show off his knowledge without really relaying much of it.
I guess crazy old hag is a bit harsh. She is your mother, after all.
He also has an interesting part in this game. He makes a statement that takes everything you think you know about Silent Hill and turns it upside down. An offhand comment that affected the rest of the series in a big way. Are you ready for it? Let's see the setup first. He shows up in the church's library when Heather is there. Listen to her groan when she realizes that it's Vincent who just walked in.
Hiya, Heather.
Vincent makes it clear that he wants Heather to kill Claudia for his own benefit.
So you've been using me to stop Claudia, is that it? Do your own dirty work.
There's a battle of wits going on here. Currently, Heather is winning because the more Vincent talks, the worse he makes himself sound. So she just sits back and lets him dig himself deeper.
Oh, really?
I'm just looking out for myself. Everyone does it.
But then he turns it around on her.
Don't stand there looking so smug. You're the worst person in this room. You come here and enjoy spilling their blood and listening to them cry out. You feel excited when you step on them and snuff out their lives.
Are you talking about the monsters?
Monsters? They look like monsters to you? Don't worry. It's just a joke.
Oof, chalk one up for Vincent. Just look at that triumphant smirk. So is it really just a joke?
What's wrong? You don't trust me?
Unlikely. As with everything else in Silent Hill, it probably shouldn't be taken at face value. In fact, there are scenes in Silent Hill 2 that also suggest that perhaps the monsters are people, and only appear to be monsters thanks to how the town likes to twist how people perceive the world around them. Also, Heather is pretty quick to believe him, all things considered. One has to wonder what she was really thinking about when she faced Leonard. She seemed pretty accepting of the idea that Claudia's dad is a monster.
Is every person here a mental case?
In the literal sense, anyway.
Well, I guess you're not a person anyway.
Now I'm sure it doesn't apply to all enemies. I would think that the dog-like monsters, giant cockroaches, and flying enemies are exempt from this. But the more humanoid ones? Probably. Vincent is named after actor Vincent Gallo, and modeled after Ethan Hawke. It really shows, in my opinion, more so than the other characters who only bear a passing resemblance to the actors they were modeled after. going by the pictures I could find anyway. I'll admit I'm not too familiar with most of these people. Can I just say that I'm really glad that they went with the design they went with? I can't imagine taking him seriously with all his smugness if he looked like a hippie. He's an aristocrat. I just can't imagine him looking any other way than he does. Vincent's tarot card is the moon. The moon can mean uneasiness, distrust, or inconsistency. I thought the personality of Vincent, who does not speak plainly to others and makes them uneasy, was applicable to the moon, so I included this card in the game.
Doesn't this place get to you at all?
Oh, it gets to me all right. I find it most fascinating.